Hello everyone, we're about to go live. We have about 5 minutes. We're going to get everybody situated. Let's go ahead. Our co-star. Let's see if they... Okay, jumping on now. Hello!
Okay.
Hey! I was wondering how, whether it would push my screen up. I don't do Instagram videos often, obviously.
It's fine. Neither of us do, so.
Okay, well, we have people joining, which is so exciting. We're like, maybe we'll just get on and nobody will join, which would be fine anyway. We would post it after. But welcome everybody who's getting on. I see Bored at Home, which is awesome. I subscribe to your YouTube channel, which is super fun. It's been fun to get to know people through this. I don't know if you feel the same way. Oh, I guess I'll introduce you officially, Kristen.
Okay, cool.
Later on. But this is Kristen, for those of you who are just joining. We do this thing together. She has a different set of board games, and so she knows other things. And so that's why I wanted to bring her in on this live broadcast. Just because we're going to be talking through some of these. I wish so badly that I had had the chance to play all of the games on our bracket list, and it definitely is. I'm definitely planning on getting them eventually, but for now, it is what it is. So between our knowledges combined, we should be able to talk at least half intelligently about everything.
Half. We'll go with half for sure.
Right.
But no, now all of these games have made it onto my list. So thank you all for making my list even longer. I appreciate it.
I was on Facebook Marketplace this morning actually, and Mage Knight with like 2 of its expansions came on, and normally I would have just passed right by it, but I was like, I know there are some people who would recommend Mage Knight so strongly, and I was super tempted to get it. It was like $80, which I know is a good price. I'm just like, oh, I don't
Still
know.
just a little steep when you don't have it like planned out, right? You're like, oh, $80 all of a sudden.
And in
But
addition to that, I honestly wonder if Mage Knight will be my thing. And I know
yeah,
I listened to a couple different YouTube videos, and a lot of them actually said, like, if I had one board game to keep on a desert island, Mage Knight would be it. And so in my mind, I'm like, geez, then out of obligation, if one person in the world thinks that, I feel like I should get the game and play it for hours in solo mode and really experience it.
yeah,
But
yeah. If somebody thinks that, then it's got to be good. I mean, that's fantastic.
maybe once we get Patreon followers and stuff, which I'm setting up, by the way, all of you who are here early might be our target audience for Patreon. But once we start getting money that we can just start throwing at board games, then yeah, absolutely. But
That's the dream, right? Just have money given to you for board games.
it is the dream.
Yeah.
Murder on the Cards just joined. Welcome. And we're getting started in about 1 minute here. We're going to go through our bracket. For those of you who have stuck around thus far, listening to us talk about our woes of not being able to buy every board game we ever wanted. Welcome.
Someday.
Okay, Kristen, really quick in the last minute, what's your favorite game right now?
Right now, I've gone back to Five Tribes. It's one of those games that I loved like years ago. And then we kind of just put it back on the shelf and didn't really touch it. But man, we've pulled it out like 2 or 3 times in the last couple weeks. And I'm like, it just warms my heart every time we set it up. It's gorgeous to look at. It's so fun to play. And I love that, like, I'm not invested for like a crazy amount of time. I can play a really, really great game in an hour, you know? So that's my go-to right now, but there are so many that I could pull out right now.
Awesome. Welcome, Sheer Boredom. We're just getting started now. Just found out that Kristen's favorite game right now is Five Tribes, which is it's way high on my list. I talk about it all the time. But
yeah,
after doing this bracket, I'm like, man, so many games have moved up on my list because of this bracket, which I'm so grateful for everybody who's participated. We'll start there. Welcome everybody who's here, first of all, because you guys are awesome. You've made the bracket work. You've made our account go up so much faster than we had dreamed. I'll keep shaking my computer so that we have the bracket on in the background. But we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you all so much for your participation. I think when we started the bracket, how many followers were we at, Kristen? Do you remember?
Not very many. It was really, really early on that we were like, let's see what we can pull off. There really weren't very many. Maybe 150. I feel like we went from 150 to where we are really fast.
Yeah.
And I think we have the bracket to thank for that, for a large part of that.
Sarah's saying hello. Sarah is actually our younger sister, which is funny. So hello, yep. Sarah. Let's go ahead and start out. I have to do a shameless plug for YouTube. We are trying to build some of our followings on other social media platforms. These are numbers that game companies do look at and decide whether or not to send us review copies based on numbers. So if you have a YouTube account, which I think everybody does, right? If you have a Google, if you have a Gmail, then you have a YouTube. You should have one. Anyway, go subscribe. You don't have to watch a ton of videos, but that number does actually make a huge difference in our ability to continue reviewing games and fueling this as a hobby for ourselves and a lot of other people. So the next is the bracket. So we started this just kind of like, oh yeah, this will be a fun, quick thing that we do. We put out a call for the first 16 people. We were very non-discriminant. We just said first 16 people to shout out a board game. We're going to put those in a bracket against each other. We wanted at least some criteria. So we said what you consider the best board game that is still in print today. Because, I mean, selfishly, I wanted to be able to find all of these and play them eventually. So yeah, it's definitely done that.
Yeah, for sure.
So we're going to start with the losers. Condolences to all of you who participated and are now knocked out of the bracket. Super unfortunate. We've seen some good games pass. So we can start there, and we're going to give just like a quick word on why we think one won over another. And then we'll move on to, we have 5 more rounds left, so we should end this week, actually. We do about 1 a day. So then we'll go through that. Sorry, I keep looking down at my notes because one fun fact about me, I have no memory for numbers. So I have the percentages here that we can go over. So our first round, Chris, do you remember what it was?
The very first one was it Small World and Scythe?
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
So we came out of the gate super strong, which that may have skewed the numbers a little bit, but Small World versus Scythe. If any of you have played either of them, these are 2 games that actually I feel like the fan bases run pretty hot on. They're both similar, like area control type games, but we have opposite ends of the spectrum as far as the weight of the game and the involvement goes. Kristen, you've played Scythe. I never have.
Yeah.
And we've both played a decent amount of Small World.
True. Yeah, so I've only ever played the digital version of Scythe, Asmodee Digital. I bought it on Steam, and that's the only time I've ever played. And everybody's like, Stonemaier games at their core are really simple. Like, you're just trying to get the most victory points, and I apparently have not made it to the core of that game because I was so overwhelmed playing that game. I was like, oh my gosh. And I consider myself a pretty good gamer, but I don't know if it was just learning it online and not having like a rule book to just quick reference stuff, but I was so lost, and I was like, I need to just keep hacking away at it because people love the game, and I really think there's something there, but I was super overwhelmed with the complexity of it all. So I love Small World for the simplicity and the speed. I know that it plays fast. I'm not invested for a ton of time, but Scythe, I think, has a lot of just weight with it.
Hello, the game is on the table, and welcome to everyone who's joined since we started. We're talking about Scythe versus Small World, which was our first matchup. I agree with you, Chris. I don't love super in-depth games, and maybe it's just a product of being a dad and stuff that I just don't have 4 hours to commit to a game usually. Right. I would love that, but it's just not where I am in my phase of life. So I've wondered if Small World lost largely because of our viewer base. I think those who are actively following board games on Instagram probably tends to be a more intense gamer.
Absolutely. I think that's 100% what it is. But interesting, though, some of the games that have fallen, because I think it's gone the other way. It's been the more complex ones that have fallen sometimes. But no, I do think, and Scythe has a huge following, and Small World has kind of a reputation of being a smaller, like, gateway game, intro game, whatever it is.
It also might be those that are in the middle, because you have like Catan and Ticket to Ride that have kind of become honorary classics. Small World's not there yet. It might get there, but it's kind of like hovering on this in between where it's not really an intense game. It's not really a gateway game quite.
Yeah. Right.
And so it probably was just sacrificed due to it didn't have the voices behind it.
Right. I think people like it, but I mean, like you said, our follower base, like they know and they love Stonemaier games. Stonemaier games has a great like repertoire of games behind them, and I think Scythe is their top that people know and love.
Yeah. Cool. That was round 1. So Small World fell to Scythe 27% to 73%. It was big. But we actually have a comment from the board at home. He said definitely takes a couple plays of Scythe to get through it, then it gets easier. So that's actually like very encouraging, because I do want to play it, and I do want to learn it. I do want to love it. The aesthetics are beautiful and everything. So I actually think it's a real contender for the top in this bracket. There are some that I just don't think will make it there, but I think Scythe actually has the potential.
Right, absolutely.
All right. Our second round was Everdell versus Dracula. Actually, 2 that I've never played. Okay, I'm on like an active search for Everdell. Granted, I'm not willing to pay like $70 or $80 for it yet, but I am like, that is one of my next games. It's between that and Spirit Island that I'm like, absolutely. Everdell is way up there in my list of games that I want.
Right.
So I don't have a lot to say about these 2. I was not surprised to see Everdell take the lead, because it is everywhere. Like, I remember it going on Kickstarter. I believe it was Kickstarter, right? Because I follow the illustrator. So he had posted about it that he was illustrating for this game. And so I remember it on Kickstarter, and its leap from Kickstarter to like mainstream games that are super popular is something you don't see from a lot of Kickstarters. We saw it from Gloomhaven. I'm not sure if Scythe ever hit Kickstarter. If somebody in the comments knows that, please tell us. But Everdell has had one of the fastest rises to fame that I've ever seen.
Right. Yeah, it went from, I didn't see it hit Kickstarter, but all of a sudden it's just been everywhere. And I'm like, there's something to this game. And then when we started our Instagram page and stuff and started following other gamers, it was everywhere. Everybody was posting about it. I had no idea how gorgeous it was, first of all. Just crazy with the components and everything. I think it's one of the prettier games I've ever seen. But I think that one is ranked at the very top of my list right now. As soon as I can stomach the $80 or whatever it takes to buy it, it's coming, because I've just heard amazing things. And I've heard the expansions are great too.
Yeah, and the fact that it has 4 expansions, like they must have hit those expansions fast. Like they must have already been in development and planned for. But really, really impressive show from Everdell. That's another one that I would expect to make it pretty far. I mean, it may get booted out during the next round. I actually forget. Let's see what our... Oh, it's
I don't think
Pandemic Legacy. Yikes.
I don't think it'll lose to Pandemic Legacy, though. Pandemic Legacy is great. It's a great game, but it's just a lot of Pandemic. And I think Pandemic is great, but I think Everdell is unique and has a better following. I think it's going to be a better game than Pandemic Legacy.
As a fire under it right now. You'll have people that like Pandemic but don't like Legacy games that might jump over to Everdell's camp.
Yeah.
So Escape the Remote just asked what game are we talking about. So right now we're going through the bracket that we've run so far, talking about the matchups and why games potentially lost to others. So we're talking about Everdell versus the Fury of Dracula. Kristen, do you know much about the Fury of Dracula? Because I know almost nothing.
So I did some research. Turns out it's a super old game that has been redone and redone. Like, But it's one of those like Scotland Yard or Stop Thief type games where somebody plays Dracula and the rest of the players are against them. And I think those games also, you kind of need the right group, you kind of need the right people, be in the right mood to play those games, because either I like games that you're all fighting against each other or you're all on the same team. But when it's like, we're all going to be against you, those games just have to be the right time, the right place, which I think is one of the things that Fury of Dracula had against it initially.
I would agree. Games like that, I mean, a good example, Imperial Assault, which is in a completely different camp. I have a hard time playing it because since I'm the most experienced player with it, I'm always the bad guys. And it just sucks to like, it sucks to win alone. It also sucks to be the only loser. And so it's just kind of, it can leave a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths. You have the same thing with Betrayal at House on the Hill, which we get into later that fell off the list. I think it alienates players a lot of times.
Yeah. Yeah. And it makes it hard to play. Like sometimes, I mean, my husband is one that loves like to be the one that everybody's against. Like Betrayal at House on the Hill. He's like, I just want to be the traitor every time. But so it works for some people, but when I'm the traitor, I get super overwhelmed and I'm like, ooh. Anyways, so yeah, I think it takes a unique group to play those games.
Cool. Okay, let's go ahead and move through. We're gonna have to move a little bit faster than this. We don't want this to be like an hour-long thing. So we're gonna move through these at a little bit of a faster rate. Round 3 was Spirit Island versus Gloom. Gloomhaven. I just wrote Gloom as shorthand. Such an unfortunate matchup. I know Spirit Island is a great game. I know Gloomhaven is a great game. That one, those two probably could have come down to the end in a lot of cases. But Spirit Island just didn't have a chance. Yeah. It's still getting a little bit of momentum behind it. Gloomhaven has it there.
Right. My heart kind of dropped when I saw that one pop up. I was like, oh, 2 awesome games. Like, it sucks that one of them has to go this early. Right. But yeah, I wasn't surprised when Gloomhaven pulled through, though. It has a massive following.
And it was by a huge margin, too. I think Spirit Island was at 28%, Gloomhaven was at 72%. So,
dang.
Such an unfortunate matchup, but hopefully we see Spirit Island come through in like our cooperative bracket or something that we run.
Agreed.
Round 4 was Raiders of the North Seas versus Terraforming Mars. Another one that I think fell prey to, one is just less well-known than another. Terraforming Mars has been around for quite a while, and it has a good following. I think it's like on the verge of being inducted as a classic, similar to how Catan was. And I think I found out about Settlers of Catan and Terraforming Mars. They've been in my mind for about the same time. So I would not doubt that Terraforming Mars won almost purely based. I mean, don't get me wrong. I don't know too much about Raiders of the North Sea. I've never played it, but it was one that when it popped up, I was like, oh, I've never really heard of that. I should look into it.
So I've actually played Shipwrights of the North Sea, and Renegade Games has a really cool thing going on with their games right now, that they have the North Sea collection, I think is what it's called, and then they have the West Kingdom collection. All of the art is fantastic. All of the games play similar, but have really unique things to them. But yeah, it's just, I think those are still up and coming games that I think are great, but Terraforming Mars is just one that's hard to compete with.
Right. It's definitely a powerhouse in the industry right now.
Yeah.
So let's talk about Catan versus Lords of Waterdeep. So Lords of Waterdeep, I mean, it just by nature of it being a property from Dungeons and Dragons has some power behind it. It has some weight. But matched against Catan, this was actually our closest match as of yet, with Catan at 54% of the votes and Lords of Waterdeep at 46% of the votes. And such an interesting one. It flip-flopped several times throughout the voting process. And personally, I wanted to see Catan go down. Here's my unpopular opinion time, which maybe amongst this group it's not unpopular. I don't like Catan. When people suggest it, I'm just like, no, I don't want to play. That's just straight up. So please, I hope Catan gets massacred in the next round. Who is it up against?
It's up against Scythe. There's not really a chance. Right? I mean, Catan fans prove us wrong, but I really don't think there's a chance there. And I'm the same way. Catan it's great for what it was, but I have no desire to play it anymore. There's so many better things to play.
I think it's like the monopoly of these new age games where it's just
Yeah.
like it filled a purpose and it was right. It got me deeper into gaming, for which I'm
Right.
grateful. However, I never want to play it again. I'm just
Right.
like, in the same way that I'm just like, yeah, Monopoly, step aside. There's bigger kids at the table. I think we're gonna see that with Catan and Scythe. I think it's gonna be I think it's gonna be really unfortunate and laughable, but
Yeah. Yeah. I agree.
maybe not. Calling all Catan fans, please prove us wrong and have a huge upset, and I'll lose all faith in everybody.
Yeah, for real.
Next we had Ticket to Ride versus Pandemic Legacy, which I saw somebody. The game is on the table. I said loves Ticket to Ride. I Ticket to Ride is another one that sits right alongside Catan. I think it's a better game than Catan, but it's one that I just don't want to play that much anymore. It's tired, right?
Yeah, it's one that like we still pull out every once in a while when we want one of those mindless games, but you have to invest time. Like I think the thing that Ticket to Ride doesn't have going for it is that you kind of have to wait. Like there's a lot of waiting where a lot of games that we play nowadays, like there's something happening every turn. Where this one, it's like I'm taking cards and I'm taking cards and I'm taking cards, until something starts to happen. But it's an okay game, but there are better out there.
Right. Just if anybody likes playing games on their phones, on mobile devices, Ticket to Ride's app is phenomenal. Like the art,
Agreed.
it's seamless. I can play through a game in probably 7 or 8 minutes, and it's actually pretty challenging sometimes to beat the computers and to get like it tracks your scores. So just beating your previous score is actually really exciting. So I do recommend the app, and that is my preferred way to play Ticket to Ride. It just feels so clunky and long for not much of a payoff when I play it on the table. But
Yeah, agreed.
let's jump down to Skull King versus Wingspan, another instance where Skull King just didn't stand a chance. Wingspan has taken, this is another Stone Myers game. It's cool to see how many Stone Meyer games we have in here. But Skull King is a great game. What did we rate it? Did we rate it 5 pips?
It's 5, yeah, on our website. It's 5. I think it's a fabulous game, and I think paired up against something like Ticket to Ride or Catan, it could have pulled through.
Right.
But not against Wingspan. Wingspan's a fabulous game. One of my favorites, ranked towards the top for me right now.
And Wingspan, I believe we also gave 6 pips, so I do think it's better. The paths to victory are varied with Wingspan. It's a beautiful game that you can't really compete with just when you have like the value of components. It's actually, for what you get out of that game, it's actually not that expensive. The pretty dice tower, like they designed to the nines on that one, and it pays off. It really is
for
a good
sure.
game.
For sure. And Skull King has like takeability. I'm gonna like patent that word. You can take it anywhere and you can play it almost anywhere, right? But yeah, it's just a lighter game. It's an intro game or a good group game to play.
Right. You're never gonna have huge followings that are passionate about it just because it fills a different purpose. It was out of its league in this bracket, I think.
I do too.
But I would like to see just a card only bracket happen too. I should be taking these notes actually. Because that one would definitely, I think, stand a chance in a card bracket.
Yeah, I agree.
So let's go ahead. Round 8 and our last round that was a huge, not a huge upset, but our other close one was Mage Knight versus Betrayal at House on the Hill. Mage Knight got 57% and Betrayal got 43%. For a minute, I did think Mage Knight was going to be overthrown by Betrayal. Betrayal definitely had the quick votes, and then Mage Knight overturned it in the end. I am excited to see where Mage Knight goes. I don't think Betrayal had the staying power to make it through the last round anyway, so I was okay seeing it go.
Right.
However, Mage Knight, I think, like we talked about before the show actually started, I'm anxious to play it just because so many people are so passionate about it. And I don't know that it'll be my type of game. It seems pretty intense. But I do want to see how it goes. I want to see it go far.
Yeah. Is Mage Knight the one that's super long? Is that the 4 hour game or
Yeah,
something
I believe
crazy?
on average it's like 4 hours. I've heard it's best in its solo player mode that
Oh, that's nice.
that you just going through. It seems like it plays very much like a video game RPG where you're going through collecting stuff and just becoming powerful and fighting this random barrage of like monsters or other like sorcerers that come up against you and stuff. It
Sweet.
sounds fun, but one of those that I'm just like, I just don't know if I'll ever have the time to devote to it. I
Right.
would
And
love to.
that's, yeah, I wish that I had, like, I wish that I could play board games all day, every day. And if that were the case, I think I would be way more open to playing this game. But
Right.
4 hours sounds really scary to me. I'm like,
Yeah.
man, I only have so many hours in a day, and I could play two or three other games in that amount of time. So it will be interesting to see how it does through the rest of the bracket, I think.
Yeah, it is just a huge commitment and probably I don't know. I will be interested to see if oh there's our bracket all nice and big. I will be interested to see if it actually can pull through another round. But all right, let's really quick go through our matchups that we have coming up this week and give our quick predictions. So first we have Scythe versus Catan. We talked about it already, and anybody watching this should know. I don't think we need to belabor the point. Catan's got
No.
to be out. It just
Yeah.
has to.
Yeah,
Don't
it's
let us
definitely
sway
out of
you.
its league.
Yeah, they're different classes of games, and I think one is just more powerful and will stay around longer.
Right.
Then we have Everdell versus Pandemic Legacy. I think this one will be tight. I think Everdell is young, although it has a huge following and a lot of momentum. I think Pandemic it's on the verge of becoming a classic. And even if it is a legacy version, I think just exposure, the number of people who have played it, and the number of people that like Pandemic, I think it'll be close.
See, I don't. I think Pandemic Legacy is great. I've played it. It's a good thing, but by the end of it, I was like, holy pandemic. It was just too much pandemic for me. I was like, I need something else. And I heard season two is really good too, but I really think Everdell has this, and I don't know that it'll be as close as you think.
Yeah.
But that's my prediction.
It'll be super interesting. I think it'll inform us a lot about our viewer base. I
Yeah.
think that's where we're going to find out, like, okay, what kind of viewers do we actually have on here?
Yeah. Interesting too, because we're growing a lot too, and I think we'll have more people voting than we did the first round,
It's
right? Yeah. So it'll just be interesting to see how it turns out. But I think Everdell has it.
All right, third, I think we're going to go with Wingspan versus Gloomhaven. Another one that I think somebody actually commented, like, this is going to be like the battle of the most overrated games in history, which made me laugh. I don't know. I seriously don't know how to call this one. I'm not a huge fan of Gloomhaven yet. I've played once or twice. Wingspan I own and I've played and I love it, but you couldn't have two more opposite games as far as like
Right.
bright and uplifting, like nature cultivation versus Gloomhaven that's all like battles and smashy. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. I think my money would probably be on Gloomhaven just because I know the group,
Yeah.
but I don't know.
Yeah.
I kind of want
That
to,
honestly, you
yeah.
kind of want to what?
I want to see Wingspan kind of though. But go ahead.
Yeah. No, I think so. When you said the desert island question earlier and somebody said Mage Knight, I say Gloomhaven just because of the versatility of the game. And I honestly wonder, it will be interesting to see how this pulls through. Like I've played all the way through Gloomhaven. We have Frosthaven coming. Like it's just going to be interesting because Gloomhaven's long and intense and Wingspan's pretty simple and like quick and you can play through it fairly quickly. But it will be interesting to see how it shakes out. I have
Yeah.
no idea which way it's going to go.
They're two completely different games that sit in two completely different categories in the industry, and it'll just really depend on what people prefer, like what play style, because they're both great games. You can't arguably say that one is better. They just fill different
Definitely.
roles.
Definitely.
All right. And finally, we have Mage Knight versus Terraforming Mars. Mage Knight is a huge wild card, in my opinion. I just don't know what to expect from it. Like I said, I don't think I had really heard much about it until it popped up in this bracket. And when that happened, I was like, I guess I have seen the art for it before. I remember seeing the box around, but I hadn't really heard many people like rave about it. But since I've had like my ears open listening for Mage Knight, there are some crazy strong fans.
Right. Yeah, I
So
honestly have no idea how to call that one because I have never played either, but I think Terraforming Mars has a more like general vote, like it appeals to the masses better than Mage Knight, I think. So depending on, like you said, depending on our followers and what they play, that'll determine which one pulls through. But I think Terraforming Mars just has so much more staying power. But
yeah.
yeah.
And that's, if I were to bet on one, I think I would say Terraforming Mars, but I would also not be surprised if Mage Knight came in as a big upset.
Right. Yeah. Sweet.
All right, so that's our lineup. By the end of this week, I think on Saturday, which is funny because I think that's like the lowest like interaction day for social media. I think on Saturday we're gonna crown a victor of this bracket, and so if you have the chance to jump on and vote for the final matchup, I would say if I were betting, I would say it comes down to Gloomhaven versus Scythe. I just seeing the people rave about those games. They're two games that I've played Gloomhaven, but not in depth. Never played Scythe. It just seems like that's what's going to happen, which I think says a lot about our viewer base. And it'll be interesting.
Yeah, it will. I think that's a very fair and accurate prediction, though. It would be interesting to see if it comes down to like Gloomhaven and Everdell.
Right.
Just Everdell has a lot of momentum right now. But I don't know if it can beat out Gloomhaven. But I do think Gloomhaven and Scythe is a very, very realistic prediction there.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be super interesting. I don't know. Thank you all again for tuning in. Thank you so much for participating in the bracket. We kept this to under half an hour, which is actually a miracle because there's so many great games on this list. And I hope, if nothing else, I hope you've all got games on your radar from this. I know a couple people commented in the early stages and said, hey, I've actually played all of these. And I was like, wow, you're a far better gamer than I am. But this has been super informative for me to research games that are on my list and should be on my list. And it's been awesome to see the interaction. So thank you all. And we're enjoying this ride with you.
Yeah, we are for sure. This has been super awesome.
Okay. All of you tune in tomorrow for, what did we say? Scythe versus Catan.
Make it a quick one.
Yeah, it's laughable, but it'll be good. Okay. Yep. Signing off. See you all later.
Bye.